In today's show, we're going to do an Azure SQL Database tutorial. The idea is that, I want to build a database so that my PowerApps peeps can use it. And so we're going to walk through all of the pieces you need to do. But this tutorial is going to apply to you whether you're an Azure person, a SQL person, or just bored on the internet looking for something fun to watch. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. In today's show, we're going to look at how to use Azure SQL Database. All right, so Azure SQL Database as a service is this opportunity for us to get an online SQL database at, almost free. I mean, you can get it as cheap as like $5 a month up to, any price you want to spend. But for a lot of my customers that are using PowerApps, they're realizing that SharePoint and Excel, those aren't the long-term scalable solutions. And maybe CDS is the end goal, but they're not quite ready to kind of bite off all that either. Then what you can do is you can use an Azure SQL Database, Azure backend, and then you get a lot of the scalability. We get away some of the delegation issues that we have, and it's just going to build us a more robust app infrastructure at a pretty low cost. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, whoa, I am not a SQL DBA, I'm not a technical person, no worries. Even though I've done all this more times than I ever care to admit, this morning I spent hours trying to break this down into consumable pieces so that someone like yourself who's not a super technical person can do it. If you are super technical, great, this will go faster for you. But either way, I am not going to wow you with how smart I am. I'm not going to try and get really technical and nerdy. Instead, what we're going to do is focus on here are the pieces, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, so you can get your data into a database out there and then start building PowerApps from there. Cool? All right. I'm pretty excited to do this. So let's just switch over to my desktop. And so on my desktop, I'm going to use a virtual machine. And the reason I'm using this virtual machine is so that way I can kind of go through all the process with you again, so you're not getting kind of brought into the middle. And honestly, the first thing we're going to do before we jump out to the Azure portal is we're going to start downloading the SQL Server Management Studio. And the reason for that is, in some of my customers, it takes like a half an hour to get this portion done. So if you can kind of get this going while you're watching the rest of the video, it'll leave you in a faster place for you to get started. All right, so let's do this. I went to Bing and I typed in SQL Server Management Studio 2017. If you have an older version of SQL Server Management Studio, you may or may not be able to use it. As we go through this, you'll see there are some cool tricks that the newer versions of SQL Server Management Studio have. So that's why I've been using it. So I'm going to click on this first link here, and I'm going to say download it. Okay, so it took me about a minute to install it, right? I cut all that out so you didn't have to watch me drink my tea while I was doing it. So let's click on this. And so then after a few seconds, I'm going to get the user account control pop up, right? So it's because I still have this desktop locked down. You may or may not get this, but I'm going to say yes. And then we'll go ahead and minimize Chrome while we do all this. So it says, hey, click here to install. And so the nice thing is there's not a lot to it. It's just going to install. It's not going to give us a bunch of options and stuff. I will tell you that the first couple of times I did this, I had pending other updates. I had to reboot a couple times to kind of get those clean. So if you have other Windows updates, they may drive you to reboot either as it starts or before it finishes. So either way, just something to watch out for. So I'll pause the video here though while this runs. I'm guessing it's going to take me probably 5 or 7 minutes as well. So I'll be right back. Okay, so if my math is right, that took me about 4.5 minutes. So we'll hit close. I did not have to restart. And just keep in mind also, if you're doing this at home, while all that's happening, while you're waiting on that to finish, you can continue on because we don't need it yet. But I know that was one of those things I want to get it knocked out of the way at the beginning of the video. So you can definitely keep going while that's installing, all the process. Okay? And also keep in mind, I install SQL Server Management Studio on my local desktop or my local laptop. It's not on a server or anything like that. It was all on my local machine here. Or in my case, a local VM, but yeah, same difference. All right, so then now that we've got that running, let's jump over and log into Azure. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to open a new tab, and we're going to go to portal.azure.com. All right, and so then it's going to ask me to pick an account. I'm going to say use a different account. Now, if you don't have an Azure account today, you can still sign into all of this. And when you sign in, what will happen is it'll let you into Azure, and then when you go to create stuff, I'll show you where you get a screen that you actually have to give them some credit card info. And so here you can see I have two-factor authentication set up. So it is asking me to authenticate. Let me pick up my phone real quick and press the button. All right, I hit approve, and bammo whammo. It's a pretty nice little thing there, right? Azure's one of those places, well, my Microsoft account's really important to me. I have lots of stuff off of it. So I use two-factor authentication, and I have an app on my phone that just says, hey, do you really want to let this person log in from there? And I did, so I let it happen. I will tell Google it cannot save my password. So now within the Azure portal, if you go over here and you click on SQL Databases, you can see that I have a big old button for Create SQL Database. If you have a different screen, and I'll pop that up right now real quick. If you have that screen, then you have to walk through there and create a Azure Azure account. Now the good news is your first month you get up to $200 free, so you can try all this out without committing to anything. The bad news is you will have to put in a credit card to get access to Azure. And they do that for two reasons. One, to make sure they can charge you, but two, to verify you're a real person. You're not a bad guy trying to spin up an account to go attack some servers or something and then spin it down real quick. So just keep that in mind. You do have to go through that, or better yet, hopefully you've got a corporate account where it's all set up and it's no big deal for you. Okay, anyway, we're going to trudge on here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the add button up here. And so now we're just going to walk through the process of creating all this. Now I also will just put out the caveat, right? I am not a SQL expert. I know a lot about SQL. I've done a bunch of SQL over the years, but I'm not an expert. So, if you're looking for expert tuning settings and things and the absolute most perfect way to do it, might not be the video for you. This video is really just going to help you get one set up so that you can start playing with it. We'll worry about all the fanciness you could do with the database at a different day. Okay? So for database name, we're going to call this video employees, I think, because that's what the database will be. It's going to ask me what subscription. So if you just set one up, it would show up. If you have different subscriptions tied to your corporate account, you can choose from there. So I'm going to use that one. For resource group, I am going to create a new one. I'm going to call this demo SQL. And so resource groups are just a logical grouping of resources. I know I'm using the words to describe the words, but I always do. But what that means is, like, when we create all these components we're about to create, we're going to put them in this resource group called demo_SQL. And so what happens then is I can manage that group holistically. So for example, I can set security on that group. I can look at spend, how much is that group costing me, and I can delete that whole group after the fact. And this is just because it's very easy in Azure to get a whole bunch of pieces to your solution. But if I have them all in that one group and I'm like, all right, I'm done with that thing, I delete the group, no more running up my credit card bills, okay? So in a production environment, I might have like production resource group, dev resource group, demo resource group, and then I give different permissions, I allocate different resources, different budgets there, and this gives me a way to control it. So that's what that is. All right, for select source, we are going to choose a blank database. If you had a SQL backup that you were trying to move out here, you could choose that. Or if you wanted to use the good old AdventureWorks that we've been using for demos for 1,000 years, they give you that one as well. So I'm going to choose a blank database. Now it's like, hey, wait a minute. Before I can create you a database, I need to create you a database server. So let's walk through that. So I'm going to click on this. And so I already have a server, but we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to say create a server. And now you have to give it a name, and it has to be a globally unique name because Microsoft's going to create a DNS entry for this so we can connect to it later. So we're going to call this, for us, Shane's Cows Demo SQL, right? Because that is a universally unique name, right? You will not be able to use that name though. So don't, you need to put your own name there. And you can see this little checker is confirming that that name is truly globally unique so that I can have it. So it'll be mine. Haha, you didn't get it before me. Server admin login. So I'm going to make that Shane. This is, if you're familiar with SQL, right, this is the equivalent when you set up a SA account, when you create that first admin account that SQL can use. So this is not Windows auth. This will be SQL auth. And so I need to give it a password. I will use this password that's in my clipboard right now. And then, oh, okay. So there you go. Give it a password it liked. Also location, be careful. A lot of my customers, this defaults to Australia. Unless you're from down under, you probably don't want to use the Azure data center in Australia. So for me, it says, hey, East US is probably best. In reality, East US is pretty busy. And so I live close enough that North Central is actually the best data center for me. But your mileage may vary. Just make sure you're choosing a data center that is somewhere close to you, geographically, and no matter what part of the world you're in. All right. So we'll do all that. So we'll say select. So that went and provisioned us in Azure or a Azure SQL Server to host this database that we're creating. All right. Do we want to use SQL Elastic pools? No, we're not trying to manage resources or any of that. We do not want to memorize that password. And so then it says, what pricing tier do you want? So let's go in here and talk about this for a second. So there's 3 different pricing tiers. And basically with pricing tiers, each tier is cheaper or more expensive than the next. But with the different tiers, what you're going to see is that there's a maximum size, right? So if I go to the basic, I can only have a database up to 2 gigs and I can only have 5 DTUs. Long story short, DTUs is how much processing power, how many transactions can this database really handle. So this will work great for my video, but probably not for anything you're actually coming out here to build for production. Go out here to standard. So you can see the max database size. And then by default, it starts at 10 DTUs. And then you can adjust the slider to increase it for workloads. And you can see my price went from $15 a month to $75 when I went up to 50 DTUs. So the thing I tell you here, the nice thing is you can adjust this later. You can come back in. We're not going to get into it, but you can look at the performance of the database and see if it needed to be increased. So don't be afraid, especially when you're trying to learn, to either start with basic or start with a very small standard. I'm going to start with a basic just to save me some money. Premium, it gets into more advanced, deeper storage, but not a big deal. So you can see for $5 a month, yeah, that's right, I'm spending $5 on you. $5 a month, I'm going to get me a database made. So we'll say apply. The last question is, what collation do you want for this database? The default collation is going to work just fine. I'm not going to have the nerdy conversation with you, what it is, why it may or may not matter. We're going to take the default, put a thumbs up and say yay. And we'll pin it to our dashboard so we can find it easier later. And now we're going to hit create. And so it's validating that everything we did, that it validated along the way, is still valid. And so then now it's going to make us a database server in a database. So we'll hit pause here for a second while this runs, I'm guessing 2 or 3 minutes here also. And the way you can tell when it's done, well, either you'll see it here, but you see the little bell over here and see the little bar going, joo, joo, joo. That tells me that it's still thinking and doing. Some of my customers are real bad about hitting refresh, then they lose, all this nice stuff they have here. So just let the screen sit here. Maybe go check on SMS or whatever, or get a drink like I'm going to. So see you in a second. Okay, so a little less than 2 minutes. Because I was patient, the screen just refreshed automatically and brought me right in here, and you can see the database. So here you notice the DTU percentage, right? That's the thing you can look at later to see if maybe that's your performance problem. We're not going there. We don't care. We've got a database in Azure. So let's now switch back over to our friend SMS and dive into connecting to this guy. We're moving right along, which is probably not true because it's been a long video already. All right, so we'll hit start, and then we're going to type in SQL, and then there's our SQL Server Management Studio 17. Okay, that took a couple minutes, so probably took 30, 45 seconds to load the first time. That was not normal once it kind of gets in the groove of things. So, all right, so server name. So this is the name we made up over here. And so because I always forget it, you can see that right there on the database screen, it says there's a server name you typed in, Shane, you dummy. So let's go right there. So we're going to put that in first, server name. And then we're going to change this authentication to SQL Server Authentication. Shane was my username, and then I think that my password was this. Okay, so then after I hit connect there, you can see that it says, wait a minute, what's going on here is that you're being blocked at the firewall. You're like, wait, I don't want to talk to my IT folks. No, it's not your firewall. It's the Azure database firewall. So your database by default doesn't let anyone connect to it. It's a stroke of genius. What's even more genius though, is if we sign in here. So let's do that. Put in my name. And then we'll put in my password. I will hide it from you people though, because I know you're a bunch of looky-loos. And so then I'll get another one of those sign-in requests. And so I'll hit approve there. And so then after a second, it's going to bring me back to the screen. And so what's going to happen is it's going to do two things for me. One, it's going to figure out what my IP address is. So there's my current internet-facing IP address. I might blur that out too. I don't know what you people would do with that. But there's my IP address. And then it's going to say you can either add just your IP or you could add a whole subnet range if you needed to add your whole network at work or something like that. But the great thing is when I click OK, it updates Azure for me. So it just opened a hole in the firewall just for my local IP address to get to this database, making the security top notch. So I don't know why, but that one feature like blows my mind. And so then if we expand over databases over here, you can see that we have video employees. And so now we have what we wanted, right? We have an actual SQL Server database running way out there in the magical cloud, but we can now get in here and manage it. Now I realize for a lot of you SQL Management Studio is new and scary. No big deal. All the things you have to do, I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to do them together here. Okay. So the first one we're going to do is we need to take, and I want to take an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm going to push the data from that because that's what I'm used to working with, is Excel spreadsheets, right? So we're going to push the data from that into Azure so we can take advantage of it. So let me grab my spreadsheet. All right, so here it is. I'll drag it over. And so you can see that in my spreadsheet here, I just have a normal Excel table, right? But what it is, the easier thing to do here is it turns out that getting the data from Excel to SQL is a lot easier if you're not using Excel. If you take this Excel and turn it into a CSV, right? A comma separated values. The good news is that's real easy to do. So I'm going to go right here. I'm going to say I want to do a file and a new workbook. So there's my new blank workbook. And then I'm going to switch back over to this guy. I'm going to highlight all the data. I'm going to right click and say copy. I'm going to switch back to this one. And so I'm going to do a right click, and I'm not going to do a normal paste. I'm going to say I want to do a paste special, and I just want to paste the values, right? I don't, in a comma separated value file, you can't have formatting or column sizes or tables or any of that. We just want to, or formulas. We just need a bunch of text. So with all my text, you know, I can expand this out. You can check it out. No big deal. This is the data I wanted though. So now that I've got that, I'm going to say file and then save as. And then I'm just going to throw it on my desktop for a moment here. So save as desktop, and we will call this video data. And so then save as type, I'm going to change this to, I want the CSV file option, right? The one down here, the comma delimited CSV. So say save. And Excel's like, wait a minute, you're going to lose all the cool things I do for you. That's okay, Excel. I don't want your cool things. So we're going to close this. We're going to close this. I don't want to save any changes to that guy either. And then I'm going to grab the file for a second. All right, and we're going to put this on the desktop of my virtual machine. Right, my virtual machine doesn't have Excel, so I had to do that kind of on my machine. I cheated a little. But what I want you to do after you make the CSV is open the CSV, but not with Excel this time. I'm going to open it with Notepad. Say okay. And the reason I want you to do that is sometimes Excel's a little booger, and Excel will actually end up messing with your data a little bit more than you'd want. So I open it up here and I just do a visual check. Does that look like valid comma separated data? Yes, there's no weird spaces, right? There shouldn't be any tabs in there. Because if your data is not clean, then this next part of importing is really sketchy. So make sure it's clean. Looks good to me, so we'll close this out. And so now what I want you to do is open the SQL import wizard. So I'm going to do start. And under recently expanded here, I've got SQL 2017 import and export data 32-bit. Why they don't have a 64-bit, I don't know. I don't care. This is the one we're going to use. So we're going to start this up. We're going to say next. And what do you want to use for a data source? And so hit the drop down, and I'm going to do a flat file source. Now you're probably a smart person. You're like, wait, Shane, why don't you just use that Excel? Because that Excel one is a pain in your butt. And I spent like 45 minutes trying to make it work in a consistent, repeatable way so I could show you guys. And there wasn't a consistent, repeatable way. It is usable. I got it to work for me, but the CSV, much more straightforward. So that's why we're doing it this way. So we're going to do a flat file source. File name, I'm going to browse. And securely on my desktop is a CSV file, right? Change this. There you go. Video data. Okay, so then here you can kind of look through it and see what the columns is it sees, how the data does. So does that look right? It does. You can get into advanced and you can tune like different column settings and stuff. You're probably not there, right? There's a lot of really cool stuff that data experts can do. You and me, we're probably not ready for that. If you're watching this video to learn how to do this, you probably don't want to mess with any of that. But maybe you do. All right, so we're going to say next. So now it says, well, what's your destination? And so for the destination, we're going to use the Microsoft OLE DB provider for SQL Server. There's other SQL ones you could probably take advantage of, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to copy this again because I'm too lazy to type it in. And so for my server name is that. Remember, we want to use SQL authentication. And so in my case, it was Shane and then that password that I screwed up the first time I typed it in. So like that. Boom, boom, boom. And so then for database, now we could let it create us a database, but we're going to take advantage of the video employees database that we already created because that's what I wanted to do in the video. So say video employees, Say next. Okay, so then just double check your source, right? So that's a CSV, and then that is the database we did, right? Several times when I was kind of going through iterations of this, I would accidentally let it use its own database names and then create new databases. I got mad, confused. Don't let that happen. All right, so there's also an edit mappings here. We're not going to mess with any of this, but there are options available to you if you need to take advantage of them, but we're not going to do any of that. And then we're also, you can do a preview, but once again, your data looks good and clean. All right, so say next. We're going to run this package immediately, so say next, and we're going to say finish. I'm going to cross my fingers that it works this time. Success! Now, I'll tell you, I really was nervous there, not with this data because I probably worked it all out, but depending on what your data is, what's in there, what your tables look like, you could be in for a little bit of a process getting this to work. But for us, yay, it worked. All right, so we will close that. And now if we minimize this and open our SQL Management Studio again, go right here and expand out tables, we'll see there's a table called video data. Right click on that table and say select top 1,000 rows. And so after a few seconds, it will show you all the data you brought in from Excel, or the first 1,000 rows if you had more than 1,000. But there is all of my data, right, from my Excel workbook published out to Azure SQL. All right, we're almost there. All right, put on your brave face. You got to do something that's way above any of our pay grades, right? But I just couldn't find an easy way to show you how to do this. So we're going to have to do something a little complicated. But that's all right. I have faith you can do this. So what has to happen is in order for your PowerApps app to work, your database has to have a primary key. In order for your database to have a primary key, the only real easy way to do it at this point is to run a little bit of SQL. The good news is if you look down in the description, I will just cut and paste this so you can cut and paste it as well. But you're going to have to do this, okay? So to run this, what we're going to do is I'm going to right click on my table, and then I'm going to change my mind and right click on my database, and then I'm going to say new query. So this opens up this query builder window. All right, and so in the query window, what I need you to do is you're going to grab this little chunk of code and you're going to paste it in, and then we're going to fix it up. Okay, so we're going to say we want to alter a table, and the name of the table is dbo. In my case, it is video data, right? So whatever name it says right here, that table you just created, that's what needs to go right here. So dbo video data. This is going to add a column named MyID. You can name yours something different. A lot of times I make it ID, whatever you want, but you need to have this column. So leave this alone. It's going to make it an integer. It's going to say it can't be null. And then it's going to put this constraint on it. And this constraint is what's going to turn it into a primary key so that the Azure database and PowerApps will be friendly with each other. Okay, so then like that. So all you had to fix was this table name. Got it? Got it. Once you've done that, press this execute button. Commands completed successfully. Shoo! That was the mean, scary thing I needed you to do. It is done, right? So now if we go back over to this tab, right? Remember our result? If you hit execute again, you can see that now we have our key over here. Woohoo! So we are set. Great news. You never have to come back into SQL again. You have now created a database, set it up. It's got all the right pieces of the puzzle you need. So now we get to go do the thing that we love to do, and that is build ourselves a Power App. Woohoo! All right. So we will minimize this, and I will open up my Power Apps window just like so. And so then here in my Power Apps window, what are we going to do? We're going to go down here to Apps. We're going to say create an app. And then over here we have the little option. And so then what you're going to need to do is you're going to say you want to do a new connection, right? Because we need to connect to that database. So new connection. Scroll down the list. You should see SQL Server way down here. Yay. We want to connect directly, right? What do we want to connect directly with though? We want to paste in that same key we had earlier, right? So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to copy this guy one more time. We'll paste that in. Boom. So Shane's Cal's demo SQL. SQL database name. So what did we name our database? Well, I don't remember, right? But let's just remember how we find this stuff. So video employees. So then we'll do video employees, like so. Username was Shane, and then the password was this. And so we'll say create. And so then now it says, which table do you want? And so we're going to choose our video data table. Now, before we hit connect there though, let's switch back over here for 1 second. If you forget your password, right, there's a good chance you will. I do it all the time. What you can do, if you need to reset that password, you'd click on, so I'm in my database, I'd click on the server name. This is going to take me to the settings for my Azure SQL Database. And so then there's a reset password here. And so then my account name is always going to be Shane, but I can reset the password and make it, I love fluffy bunnies or whatever it is you want to do. All right. So handy little trick because I forget the password a lot. All right. So we chose our table. We're going to hit connect. And so then now PowerApps is going to do that thing that it does so magically for us. It is going to create a app for us, a 3-screen app, with display the data, edit the data, add records, delete records, all of those fun things that we need. We'll say skip to this. And so we can then take advantage of, all the other tips and tricks and things you've learned along the way with PowerApps. So one thing to keep in mind, if this plus is not here, right, what that means is that, yes, as you're connected to your database, it's showing you your data, but it means you can't add, edit, or delete. And the reason for that, this drove me crazy the first time it happened to me, is because you don't have that primary key. So if for whatever reason after you create the app, this isn't here, something went wrong with the portion where you had to create the primary key, or you're using a table that you don't mean to, whatever it is, this plus and all the functionality that goes with it only shows up with a primary key. That's a pro tip, save you some time. And I think that does it for today, right? That was everything I wanted to show you to kind of get us started. So now we have SQL data connections using Azure SQL in our wheelhouse. If you want to use an on-prem SQL server, right, there is a separate video that you can check out below that talks about how you use the data gateway to connect to that. So this is it. We've got SQL fully in our repertoire. We can now take advantage of it. And one of the great things about it is SQL is faster, it's more scalable, and it doesn't have all those delegation issues we keep having with SharePoint. Cool? Cool. All right, well, I think that sums it up. It's like 75 degrees outside, so I'm going to go outside and enjoy the weather. You do the same, and thanks. Have a great day. Hey, it's me again. If you got a second, click the subscribe button. That always keeps me making more videos. Or if you want to work together, need some help getting your PowerApps going, hit me up at PowerApps 911. Always happy to work together. Or finally, if you're really just looking for more videos, that's probably what it is. Check out the PowerApps playlist over here and enjoy that. All right, thanks and have a great day.